Hi everyone! So this is our second movie review, and we're again CG Cruz,
Greg Papa.
We are from Roaming Shadow Productions. We're missing our buddy Austin Green today. We're very sad. But yeah, we wanted to review a new film called, well, it's been out for a while, but it's called The Substance.
We're going over all the films that may or may not be Oscar qualifying or nominated for Oscars.
Yeah, they're going to be announcing that later this month, and we just thought we would start looking at some of them. So yeah, The Substance was one that had been on our list for a while. I've always been a fan of Demi Moore.
And I've always been a fan of people destroying their bodies. So
Yes. Check out Fox's Gold or any other the
or
films.
Taffy Rita and the Rattlesnake.
Coming soon.
This summer.
Coming this summer. So, The Substance is a film about an aging actress.
Yes. A slightly aging actress.
A slightly aging actress, because let's face it, Demi Moore is gorgeous. But, you know, according to society standards, an aging actress who finds herself all of a sudden out of work and like no longer kind of at the star power that she once had. And so she sort of dabbles into trying to find ways to stay young. And so
she's exploring the fountain of youth. She's like a day too old for the studio that she works for, and they're just like, thanks for everything you done. Don't let the door hit you on the ass on the way out.
Yeah, they give her a cookbook as like a parting gift, which is
a
amazing.
French cookbook.
A French cookbook that she can't read. It's amazing. But yeah, Dennis Quaid plays an absolute
just over the top,
disgusting, misogynist pig of a
yeah, not so loosely based on the
somebody
Harvey
else named
Weinstein type.
Yeah, he's actually called Harvey.
Yeah.
So there you go. So they weren't trying to pull any punches there. But yeah, he there's
But through The Substance that she acquires in this sort of shady way, she's able to activate basically this inner part of herself, who comes out in the Margaret Qualley Sue character.
Yeah.
Who comes out, and she's not quite Demi Moore when she's younger. She's like a different version, and like it's sort of almost like Demi Moore's, what's her name? Elizabeth.
Yeah.
Elizabeth's like, it's almost like her ideal version of herself, if that makes sense.
Right, exactly. So like their eyes don't necessarily match. It's not like they match like perfect one-on-one.
Yeah.
So it's like the idea, and like there's obviously, we were actually just talking about this, there's skill sets that the Sue character has that obviously Elizabeth doesn't have. So like there's almost like this superhero, superpower quality to Sue, to Margot Qualley's character, where she can like all of a sudden knows all these like construction skills that Elizabeth
she builds this like, she like bashes out like this
concrete walls.
Yeah, and then
like,
builds this like hinge door or something, like a wall door basically, secret passage door, and then like she like kung fu kicks her someone else at some point and kicks her clear across the room, and then
so she has like almost like superpower qualities that aren't exhibited in like the real world. So it's like Demi Moore's character Elizabeth on crack, and like her idealized world of like, I've done fitness for so long, and she can do fitness to like the umpteenth degree kind of thing. So that's a little bit about, like, we don't want to do like too spoilery, so because we obviously think that you should see it yourself. So I guess like next we'll look at maybe some of the inspirations for the film.
There's very clear, there's some that are very clear inspirations, like
The Shining for sure.
The Shining, and Kubrick in general. They do this what was the director's name? How do you pronounce her name?
Coraline Farge?
Corley Farge. We're doing this purely out of ignorance.
So sorry.
Sorry, Coraline.
Please
Carol.
Hire us as actors someday.
Yeah, we're brilliant or something. I don't know.
Corley Farge. Okay. So The Substance, directed by Coralie Farge,
Yes.
is
definitely takes a lot of inspiration from Kubrick, in the way that, in a lot of ways, like some of the production design, but also in the way that some of the things are shot. And if they do this, I can't really pinpoint what Kubrick. I think it's in Clockwork Orange where like she does this twice where they sort of like leave the camera, like it feels like it's off in like this really big wide.
Mm-hmm.
And then someone will enter and they're really small in the frame. You're like, this is kind of like odd framing. But then like this happens with the Dennis Quaid character where he like walks into a bathroom and then like she goes in. Demi Moore character goes in there first, and then Dennis Quaid's character comes in later. But he's like way off, and he comes in. He's right on top of the camera, and it gives this like really disorienting feel to the whole thing. It's like if it's not in a Kubrick film, it feels like a Kubrick thing or a Lynchian thing.
Yeah.
Because there's these sort of like very dreamlike sequences that are going on, sort of like hazy, sort of like Mulholland Drive-ish things that are going on with the way that she's like Demi Moore's character's headspace is in.
Yeah, and I mean, there's for sure direct homages to different films.
Yeah, definitely.
The Shining being like a shining example
Ah!
of that. So like there are, and Psycho was another big inspiration for them. So like you could see like probably like still by still.
I mean, even like
homages.
the production design, like the color schemes are very
The
similar.
color,
Especially when
that
they're at
hallway.
the hallway, the bathroom.
Yeah.
Had that like red and white.
That red and
with
white.
the pattern on the carpet and stuff. Another one's like very obvious that it felt like was definitely Cronenberg.
The Fly.
Because of the amount of body horror and even like the parts of the body that are experiencing the body horror that are in it. Obviously, she has her own take on those things, but like The Fly has to be a massive influence. And I also thought that it felt like Brandon Cronenberg as well, because I really loved his film Possessor, and it sort of felt like there was that element to it as well, of like having like two different personalities or entities occupying the same body, and sort of like destroying itself from the inside out kind of thing. But yeah, the body horror was definitely intense, but always felt purposeful.
It felt purposeful. It definitely, I mean, yeah, and it definitely was purposeful. Like, I was definitely more comfortable with it than you were, but you enjoy body horror, whereas I don't.
Yeah, the only time I felt really, like, kind of uncomfortable is when she's, like, taking her teeth out one by one. That one got me a little bit. The other stuff I just enjoyed.
Yeah, I can't say, like, in general, like, there were just parts that felt in my brain excessive, but I know you're supposed to, as an audience member, feel like they're like it's supposed to make you feel uncomfortable. Like that part is purposeful. Like I feel like that is the director's intention, is that like, no, I want you to look at yourself from the inside and think about these things and think about how uncomfortable you are with the concept of aging and like with the concept of being left behind and all these issues that it brings up. And so like, you know, seeing like a beautiful, perfect Margot Qualley, like, you know, wash herself, you know,
for a while
is supposed to make you feel a little uncomfortable, perhaps. I mean, for some people, perhaps.
That one, it felt more like, oh, she's really feeling what it's like to have this fresh, brand new skin. And again, it's body, like, it's not like Demi Moore's like,
again,
she looks
Demi
great
Moore's gorgeous.
in the movie,
yeah.
But then it's like even if you look from looking great to being like this idyllic, perfect version where everything's still like crazy smooth or whatever, like it's got to feel like, you know, like brand new. It's brand new,
so like you're just like, ooh, like I feel like I have to.
There's no more aches and pains and stuff, and that's sort of what the feel of the film has, is this like addiction. has this addictive quality
to it. I mean, I was gonna say, before we move on to like addiction, because I think like we obviously need to talk a little bit about the substance itself, and some of that stuff. It's probably the most disgusting scene is, for me, and I feel like most people will agree, is not one you would think. It's not really even the body horror that's happening to the characters. It's actually Dennis Quaid eating a plate of shrimp.
I thought that was hilarious. That was like so well shot.
It is absolutely disgusting. And the reason that it is purposeful and it's absolutely, it's like he's discarding this, something that's considered kind of a delicacy. They're at a nice restaurant. He's about to like, fire her, or she is being fired. And like, basically the shrimp symbolizes like the women he just kind of tosses from like the employment that they have. And so like he's only eating like a portion of the shrimp and then tossing out the rest, and like discarding them before their time kind of thing. And then but the sound design is just like, it's just, if you have any kind of issues with like hearing people eat at all,
it's like it's right on top of his mouth every time he like puts it in. It's this really weird thing of like they cut in every time he's about to put one in, and he's just constantly eating this shrimp while he's talking with his mouth full. So even when he's not actively putting something in his mouth, he's got like bits of it in his teeth, and it starts falling out. And it's like, it doesn't, we're not doing it justice. It's hard to do it justice of how unsettling that scene felt, but like when you were really grossed out, I was cracking up about how grossed out you were by it. But it really is like a really off-putting scene, which is really funny because of the amount of like her fingernail comes off at some point, she's pulling her teeth out, and she becomes like this grotesque monster. Like, even like, but then
Demi Moore as the Matrix and like birthing basically the version of Margot Qualley, like a whole other human coming out of you kind of thing.
But him like eating that shrimp
is literally probably the most disgusting scene in that entire film, or disturbing, I don't know. But anyway, just FYI, sound design, whoever did the sound design for this film, top notch.
You done did a good job.
It was purposeful, it was beautiful. You
probably make Mike Moen very happy.
You'd make Mike Moen, shout out Lancaster, Pennsylvania. Very, very proud. So, as we mentioned before, Demi Moore's character Elizabeth ends up being not contacted, but she gets like recruited. She kind of gets recruited. So we end up finding out that like a kind of like a younger version of somebody else,
someone who is using the substance actively, recruits her to also participate in
this project or whatever it is. That part is always that
it's very vague.
It's very vague and unanswered, like,
which I'm fine with. It's just kind of like one of those things where if you're as an audience member, you're just like, these are the rules.
These are just the rules.
This is how this works, and it's like it's very simple storytelling, and it's just like she just gets this. She calls the number, she gets a number, and then it tells her where to go, and she just picks it up every week, and it's just kind of like it's really like going to a sort of like this boutique drug dealer.
She goes to, a crazy alley. That she ends up going to, but she gets this boutique thing. The thing about the substance that's that she's taking that's interesting is the way in which it's administered, and like the purposeful way that each thing kind of like has to be done. So like the activator, which is like the first thing she has to take, like to actually like get the transition process to happen, really highlights like addiction, because like even the way she has to administer it looks like heroin. Like she actually has to like tie it up and then inject it and everything else, and like her eyes become like they look dead and everything else.
Well, she sort of do like, it's like a, what are they, those bugs, like cicadas.
Yeah,
that's sort of what it feels like, is that like she sort of falls over in this limp formation, and then out crawls from her back the Margaret Qualley character,
Yeah.
Who is also like equal. She's even more addicted to the substance. So the thing is that neither character can come to terms with is that they're the same person.
Right.
And they're willing to destroy themselves.
They are told, like, there's, like, that's the thing, is that there's these very specific set rules that if you wanted for things to work perfectly, you have to follow. And so, like, the main things with that, again, with the drug administration that they're doing, they have to activate. After they activate, the other person comes out. They, in essence, like, are birthing the person. You then, as the new person, have to make sure that your host, the Matrix, is fed properly. So, like, there's, like, all this, like, series of, like, food that the person is basically... Yeah.
But, like, you can only be in that... She can only be the Sue character, the substance character, for 7 days. And then any more than that, you're pretty much on borrowed time. So, right. The Margaret Qualley character... As she's like, she goes and she basically just replaces Elizabeth like immediately at her fitness thing, and she's just better at it, and she's, you know, bigger, better, more beautiful, and all this other stuff, and she gets addicted to that instantly, and she's instantly like, it's kind of like what, from her point of view, is like, well, why would I want to go back into this body for a week when I could just be perfect for a week, for just a little bit longer, just a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then the more she takes from the Elizabeth Demi Moore character, the more she's like, Demi Moore becomes less and less of herself, and she starts having these things where like her finger starts rotting, and
she's given the opportunity at that point to quit. She could stop whenever. So the interesting thing is that, like, it's not until she is probably at her most Quasimodo-ish.
Yeah, she's full on Quasimodo.
She's full on Quasimodo that she comes to the realization that, like, oh my gosh, this woman has, this other version of me has, like, sucked so much of my vitals to stay in the young form and stay in the world without following the rules for so long, that, like, she's basically, like, hunched over. Like, she just...
Yeah, she looks like Quasimodo. She's, like, lost so much of her hair and her face, and she's totally unrecognizable.
She's completely unrecognizable. Although, like, fit as a fiddle. Like, she ran down those stairs.
Yeah. Quasimodo was an athletic person, so...
Yeah, like, he had to be for the ringing that bell at Notre Dame.
Singing all those songs.
And singing all those songs. But, yeah, she definitely had some agility there that was surprising. But it's not until she gets to that extreme point that she's finally, no, I'm done. I don't, like, want to do this anymore.
Yeah, her vanity is so destructive.
It's just so destructive.
And everywhere she goes, she's reminded of the Sue character. So so in her living room, there was this massive poster of Elizabeth that the Sue character, and that's the first thing she does pretty much when she goes out in the living room, is immediately gets rid of the Elizabeth character, that poster of her, and then over time, as Sue becomes a bigger and bigger name, she replaces that photo with a equally large one. And then there's also the billboard outside out of her luxury sort of LA apartment, and no matter what Demi Moore does, she can never sort of escape. She can't even bring herself to go outside other than to go get her substance for the week. So it, like, at the cost of being perfect, this other part, the more human part of her, just keeps being more and more and more eroded.
Yeah.
Every time.
And the interesting thing about it is that before any of this takes place, like, there's obviously other options. It's like, we'll find a different job. Like,
yeah, she never even considers that.
She never considers that she could find another job. She never considers that she can go on a vacation and then start new or fresh. Yeah. She never considers reaching out to family or friends. Like, we don't know if she has family or friends. That was the other thing,
is that
there's a guy who wants to date her.
In the film, Elizabeth is an Oscar-winning actress.
Right.
Who then went on to have this really successful fitness career.
Right.
That sort of like a side tangent, but the film does this really cool thing where it feels like it's straight from the 80s, but it's also modern.
Right.
Where, like, as I guess it's supposed to be like the Demi Moore character and the Elizabeth character and the Sue character. The Sue character is modern and hip and all this other stuff, and the Demi Moore character is like from the 80s. So, like, you'll see like 80s cars or 70s cars parked right in front of brand new Mustangs, you know? So, like, they're and the technology is like she's watching TV on like a regular, like an and 80s TV.
The phone is dial-up.
Demi Moore calls on, like with a touch tone thing or like with the dial, but then they also have cell phones.
Right.
So they blend those two worlds together.
Yeah, it's a very blended. I mean, which is probably purposeful because it's just like things that it would be more Demi's age versus like things that would be more like.
And just the concept of being this really popular like 80s style fitness. Who was the
Jane Fonda.
Mm-hmm. It was Susan Summers. Suzanne Summers had that sort of. It's like this one piece leotard thing. Like, get those
very
knees
like
up.
neon,
up.
very neon, and very
with the
like,
girls dancing next to you,
with like the leg warmers and everything else. Like, it's very like evocative of that. But yeah, I mean, like, everywhere she goes, like, it never dawns on her that, like, she even has a guy that, like, from her past, it's like, you were always the prettiest girl, and, like, you still are
He's such a sweet guy.
He's such a sweet guy, and she does set up a date with him, and then, so those billboards that Greg just referenced, the thing about them is, I read somewhere that, like, as much as that hallway was sort of, like, her internalized self, so like how she sort of views like who she is, that billboard is how she thinks that like her mask. So like what Young called the mask. Mm-hmm. So like what the world sort of sees her as. And so as she's getting ready for this date, she physically at first in the bathroom sees, you know, like Sue on the ground and is like, ugh. And then, like, you know, tries to make herself, like, look younger and stuff. And then as she goes out and, like, and she looks perfect and she looks beautiful.
Wears this nice red dress and all this
beautiful
stuff.
Red dress. Her hair looks gorgeous. Her makeup looks flawless. And this is her first time that she's actually going to venture outside her home to do anything other than picking up the substance. And, or to pick up the stuff from her job, her old job.
Yeah.
And so, she goes to, open the door and she sees that billboard, and every time she sees that billboard, that's the famous scene that you see in the trailer where she's just sort of like starts to rub everything off because she just, no matter what she does, she just can't look like Sue.
Even when she's not facing it, it's like it feels like it's constantly like encroaching on her.
Yeah, like she sees it peripherally, and then she sees the image reflected off of the doorknob.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And she just can't escape it. She can't
escape it. And it's just ever present that, like, she just has this fear that that's the way that the world sees her, is that the world sees her as, this is who you're supposed to be, and this is what we want you to be, and if you can't give us this, you're worthless. And
even though the guy totally accepts her, and from the jump is just like, you know, he just comes across as a really... A lot of the guys in the film are, like, misogynistic dickheads, like the Harvey character, the neighbor guy.
Even the guy that Sue dates for, like, a little bit. The motorcycle guy.
Yeah. All those guys are kind of, like, you know, sort of how, like... They're sort of the, like, stereotypical men of how you would picture... I don't know, like super feministy movie to be,
right?
But then it doesn't, for a film that's so heavy-handed in its subject matter and the way it's delivering.
Mm-hmm. It doesn't hide the fact that it's about a woman who's like aging and is scared of aging, and
it never really feels like man bashing. It never really feels like I think because they introduced this guy character who is like just really nice. He's just trying to be nice.
I think also there's like
and there's the element of she's mostly battling with herself.
And that's what I was about to say, is I think that part of it is that the focus is like, yeah, sure, there's people like that out there, and you can't control them.
Mm-hmm.
But what you can control, potentially, is yourself.
Right.
But you have no ability to control yourself at this point.
Yeah.
Hence the addiction with, all these things, all these elements, which then Sue is even more addicted because she's, of course, Elizabeth 2.0. She's like,
and then when
more.
And then, so Sue keeps stealing and stealing from Elizabeth, and Elizabeth becomes more and more like more monstrous, really. Mm-hmm. And then so Elizabeth is just like a shut-in, and she's like, all right, well, screw you. I'm just going to eat whatever I want, and, I'm going to let myself go. And then, but that in turn affects Sue because of the same person. And then as things aren't going as well for Sue, and she's like losing her teeth and stuff like that, even she feels the pressure to be a more perfect version of herself. She's already the idyllic version of Elizabeth, but then she feels the pressure, who's only in her, she's probably only in her early 20s.
Well, the reason that Sue started to do that, the deterioration, is because she forgot the rule that you are one. And she does something, no spoiler there, but she just does something that she can't recover from. Mm-hmm. But yeah, like, so there's definitely just too much. She herself has this, like, and you see it, like, her eyes just like dilate every time she takes more from Elizabeth. Like, like she has to feed off of her a little bit, but like every time she does it, it's like this high that she gets. And so it's really almost like getting that shot of, I guess, I don't know how much they're going into like the whole thing with like Botox or any of that kind of stuff. Like I
think that it's got to be. I was supposed to say, like, I feel like it's more of an indictment on like the way that the cosmetic industry treats. Oh, we'll just touch you up, and we'll touch this, and we'll touch this, and we'll touch this, and then you'll be perfect. Yeah. And it's like some, I don't know, some of the girls out there getting this baby Botox stuff, and it feels like, are you literally never enough? You know?
Yeah. And
it's
so
this,
like
it's this really hideous thing that like, I mean, there are like the male standards, but those are more like physical. Like you can work on those things and stuff like that. And I guess guys probably get that shit too. But the way that like, I feel like it gets so pushed on women, and now like the fact that Botox and this baby Botox stuff gets pushed on like early 20s, mid 20s,
I've known girls that
women,
are teenagers.
I mean, I just find that to be wild, and that's how I took it when she was like, obviously she's like sort of disfigured. She's disfigured, like she had disfigured herself, but then she's like, I can make myself even more better version of myself.
There's gotta be an even better version of me. And that's the thing that was odd, is that like they are one, but they're not sharing a consciousness. Cause like it's not it's not like that when Elizabeth was sleeping and Sue was taking over and vice versa, that like they've remembered or lived what the other one was living per se. So it was like the idea of them and like the mask that society sees of them that is out in the world, which is why like Sue is so repulsed by like, when I'm not around, this is what the world sees me as.
Right.
And why at the end, when Elizabeth has a chance to finally get rid of Sue and actually like make a change, she just looks around and she's just like, she sees another, obviously another huge inspiration for this has got to be the picture of Dorian Gray, because like obviously with all the pictures everywhere, and how her life deteriorates the second that she like throws something at the frame and cracks it, all of a sudden like that process starts to deteriorate more and more for her. There's this thing where like she's like basically become Quasimodo at this point, and she just does not look at all like herself. And she just looks at this, in her mind, gorgeous girl lying down on the floor who, it's like, I'm not sharing that experience. like that, you know, like people don't even call her Elizabeth. It's not like people think she's me. But she's just like, but because you were a part of me, like, this is the part of me that still lives out in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, I can't destroy you.
Because, well, she even says to her when she's ready to, she's given the option of ending the project. And she's like, no, you're the only part of me anyone likes. Yeah. You're the only part that's worth anything. It's really sad.
It was really sad. I mean, some people mention like the whole mother-daughter sort of like dichotomy, like and that. So like that's kind of what that feels like, is like they're kind of at ends with each other, and like it sort of feels like that destructive sort of like momager dadager thing, where like a parent like takes their child to, I mean, people know what that is, but like basically like the dreams that you didn't get to fulfill, like you put on your kids, and like you're just like, go out and do them, even though like you're not the one like personally living them yourself. It sort of has a little bit of that feel, that
thing of like when like a drug addict, like let's say a meth addict, when they're on meth, no matter what they look like or how deteriorated they are, they feel their confidence is unbelievable. Yeah. Because their substance makes them feel amazing. So it felt like, you know, obviously we were talking about like the drug addiction aspect of it, but it felt like, to me, I always felt like when she was in the Sue body, I thought that her conscience was in there, and that's why she was able to, you know, it's kind of like, man, if I went back and I was in my 20s, I could just, and I had all the knowledge that I knew now, imagine what I would be like if I did that. And that's what it felt like to me, that it allowed her to do that. The problem with that is that, like, if you're only in a small time frame, that's all you want. Right. In a similar way of, like, if you you do meth, you know, this is why it's such a problem, is that like when you do meth or heroin or one of these things, that's all you want, and you're willing to destroy everything about yourself in order to just get that fix. Yeah. I mean, I think they had glimpses of that. So like, I think right before they came out of their states, there was those moments where dreams. Like those dreams that they had right before they came out of their states, where they were like, oh, I dreamt this thing, like, happened to me, and then that's when, like, Demi wakes up and she realizes, like, oh, like, my finger's, like, all messed up now. And it's because she, like, took a little bit more than she was supposed to. She, like, bought a few more hours than she was supposed to. And then, there is no she, only you. You are one. You are one. She can, neither of them can come to the fact that they're the same person, because they hate the other person so much. Yeah, they're just so at odds with each other. And so they just view each other as the enemy, which obviously is like another big... Even worse saying it, we view each other as the enemy. They really, she just views herself as the enemy. They're the same person. There is only one. Yeah. So in terms of the acting... Yeah. I thought all the performances were really spot on and like dialed in. Like... For a film that's so over the top and stylized and gratuitous and grotesque, like, the performances are just like, I don't know, they feel like they're very... The Demi Moore and the Sue characters feel like they're very, like, very real, in a way that the Harvey character and the neighbor and stuff like that feel caricaturistic. They feel caricaturistic, but even then, like, you can't look away from Dennis Quaid. Like, you're God, Dennis Quaid was probably my favorite character in the film. He did a great job because he's so repulsive. Yeah. It's just the way, like, in that shot where he's like all the way down the hallway and he's carrying like her, like, a last box of hers, and he's like, oh, hey, my favorite girl. He walks all the way up to her from this long hallway, and he's just like, well, thanks for all you did, bye, see ya. And like, he's just this like slime ball of a human scummy character, and it's like, you know, this is really based off of someone. Like, his name's Harvey. Yeah, it's definitely like somewhat based off of Harvey Weinstein. But I'm sure there's other like scummy eating the shrimp that way. Like, you know, like, that director or someone has to have had a meeting or something like that where something like that was going on. But the way he's, like, so over the top about it, but fits perfectly in the world. I think that goes back to, like, the directing of the film, is that, like, the world makes sense here. You know, like, everything has its place. And for Dennis Quaid's character, it's like the director told him, you cannot possibly be grotesque enough. You cannot possibly be misogynist enough in this film. And
go harder.
And he nailed it.
Whatever you think is, like, the ceiling, go higher.
If you think you're slapping your lips too much while you're eating that shrimp, you're not doing it enough.
You're not doing enough. Like, go farther.
And then...
I was going to say, yeah, everybody that was in the film was amazing. I mean, but it was definitely even more... It was obviously centralized mainly with Demi and with Margaret. And so, like, those are your two pillars, really. And, you know, you had a lot of, like, supporting. And it's just... These two women just really went into it with... I mean, Margaret obviously is just starting, like, her career, so, like, I don't...
Margaret's been around for a while. I really liked her in The Leftovers, and that came out, like, 2012?
Really?
Yeah, something like that. I remember watching that in college.
Wow.
I mean, she's, like, 17 or 18 in the film, in the show, something like that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't seen The Leftovers. But, like, I mean, like, I was a fan of her mom's when she was... you know, in films with Demi back in the day.
Didn't know that.
Yeah, they did this movie called St. Elmo's Fire together.
Oh, I know of that movie, but I know.
Yeah, Andy McDowell, who's Margaret Qualley's mom.
Oh.
I
know the name.
Yeah, so she was in that film as well. So, like, they've worked together in the past and stuff. And, like,
but it's been nice to see. Well, that's a really cool. I didn't know that. That's a cool connection. But it's nice to see Margaret Qualley sort of. Because I liked her so much in The Leftovers, that, like, she's been just given more and more sort of, like, responsibility in the industry. Like, she was in Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and she was in The Nice Guys. She was in that film, but then to see her go and do something like this, where we just watched an interview where she was like, you know, you sort of think that, like, to be taken seriously especially as a female actress, you can't do glam or something that's, like,
you can't do glam and you can't be overly sexualized, especially, like, you know, like, I've been told, like, oh, you're the girl next door, like, that's like, you know, like, your box is, like, Rachel McAdams and The Notebook, and, like, you know, like, that's your box, and, like, that's the box that you should live in, and, like, you know, don't do, and, you know, and, like, you just don't listen. Like, my box is how I want to define my box, but, like, that probably came out bad. Cut that. But anyway,
you are what you define
you
yourself
as.
If you allow yourself to be put into
those boxes,
into a box, then that's where you'll live.
Exactly.
And it's really nice to see that, like, it feels like she was there, or at least, you know, somewhere kept in a place, and she really challenged herself to do something like this, where, I mean, I've seen her in, like, Spike Jonze has a music video where she does this big dance thing, so I knew she was a pretty talented dancer, but to do, like, she ain't doing, like, ballet dancing in this, you know?
She's not doing ballet dancing, and she's, like, definitely, you have to, like, get into, like, a super mental, like, on its face level, like, because she talked in that interview about, like, the uncomfortableness, like, about, like, people are gonna dislike me because I'm a, like, unlikable character because of all the things that I do and what I represent.
Right.
But I mean, you need to have those characters, and I feel like she did it so well in terms of, like, you know, and, like, when a person does those characters well, like, it's like, well, yeah, you did your job. Like, congratulations.
And also,
like, that's a good thing.
It's a compliment to the writing, because both of the characters, like, especially those characters, their motivations are really clear. Like, obviously, if you were Sue, you would always only want to be Sue. And then even when you're Elizabeth, you still only want to be Sue.
Right.
Obviously, why would you not want to be that character?
Right.
Yeah,
exactly. And so, like, but she definitely, like, stretched herself in a different way, in the sense of, like, I mean, they both did, in terms of, like, obviously, like, Demi Moore has done, like, covers of Vogue and all that kind of stuff, and, like, she's exposed, you know, she did striptease and, like, kind of stuff, so, like, she's not, like, new to, like, showing parts of her body, but this is, like, showing parts of your body at a more advanced age, I guess. And so, like, I mean, she still looks absolutely amazing.
Yeah.
So,
and that's also the point of the film,
which is that
the way she sees herself is more like the Eliza Sue character, even though she still looks great.
She still looks amazing. And so, but, like, to have her, like, kind of, like, look at herself that way, and, like, you know, exposing, like, and then, like, looking at her body and being uncomfortable with it, and then having Sue, like, overly long, like, so, like, there's, like, these scenes where, the ones that made me feel like they were a little bit gratuitous and a little bit uncomfortable. Like, it is hard to put yourself in those spaces, because it's a very vulnerable space to be in, I guess. So, like, that's definitely a challenge, being physical while you're in those positions as well.
Yeah. And there's, like, a lot of, like, tight close-ups on...
There's a lot of tight close-ups on things that, like, obviously, you know, you have to be, like, comfortable, and I'm sure, like, there was, like, intimacy coordinators and all sorts of stuff there, and, like, there was definitely, like, close sets and that kind of stuff for that.
Probably the most, like, 80% of the film is probably a close set.
Probably 80% of that film was a close set, but, yeah, just in terms of, like, their understanding of what the other might be feeling, or what the stakes were, I think, might, like, the emotionality. I actually thought it was really funny, having just mentioned the fact that Margaret, I don't know why I keep calling her Margot, but, Margaret, is Andie MacDowell's daughter, and, like, they had done a movie, when she was just like, yeah, I never really knew her myself, but, like, I think, like, my mom grew up watching, and so, like, it was just funny that, like, she said that line, and I was just like, cause,
right,
like,
in the film she says that, right?
Yeah, she's like, my mom kind of grew up watching her, kind of thing, and it's just this, like, which is funny, because, like, they did a film together and stuff, and probably they, you know, for all intents and purposes, Margaret probably, like, spent time at Demi's house as a child. So it's an interesting thing there. But, like, performance-wise, to see these two very strong female performances was, like, a cool thing to watch.
Yeah. I think, like, the overall acting from both Qualley and Demi Moore is really good. But I think the stakes of, like, the amount of exposure they have to deal with while delivering those performances elevates the performance.
Yeah, absolutely. And for someone like, I do think it's a career defining performance for Demi Moore, for sure.
It's gonna be a Demi Moore-essence.
It's definitely a Demi Moore-essence.
And Margaret Qualley's probably going to be the lead of a lot more films.
Yeah, for sure. So as far as, what would you rate it? What would you think?
It was definitely more of a me movie, I feel like, than a you movie. I really loved a lot of the body horror elements. I wasn't really grossed out by a lot of them. I felt like a lot of them were really well done. They had sort of this, like, the thing, especially by the end, with, like, the different faces and stuff like that on the Eliza Sue character. But I felt like some of it got a little long-winded. Some of it was, like, really, like, I understood what the director was going for, but it seemed gratuitous. Not even in the violence, more like in the sexualization of Sue, which like I understood how that fit into the film, but then at a certain point I was like, I got this point the first four or five times you did it. Now we're still doing it. That I was kind of like, all right, now you're being overly heavy-handed in my opinion. But I really liked the whole thing overall. I thought that the messaging was really clear. And then again, for a film that had that kind of messaging that was so heavy-handed, I didn't feel so much like it was beating me over the head with it, because I was along for the ride, and I understood why it was there. So I think I get like a nice little 7.4.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm still processing. In terms of, I was definitely not ready for it. I mean, I knew that there was like some elements of body horror in it. I was not ready or prepared for the degree of body horror that was in this film. I'm not a huge body horror, like horror in general. I like making horror films because they're fun to make, and like to see the process that, you know, I love working with like our makeup artists and our SFX artists and stuff, and they're brilliant. So I love being a part of that process.
Shout out
Izzy,
Eisel, and Brian Spears.
Yes. So shout out, definitely. But I don't necessarily like to sit and watch those types of films. If I'm gonna watch things within that world, I definitely prefer more thriller / suspense films and like jump scares, as opposed to like actually like seeing things. No, sometimes it gets like funny because it's like ridiculous. So like the last thing was like, it's just so over the top.
The Eliza Sue, the whole sequence, that was really fun.
The whole Carrie thing that like alludes to like the whole Carrie thing.
Oh, what's up,
hi, Zoe. It's my puppy. So yeah, so that's like so over the top that was like, okay, fine.
They're having a lot of fun.
They're having a lot of fun with it, and so like I can see how it would be fun to make a movie like that.
Yeah.
But for me, like, the reason I'm saying I still have to process is like there wasn't anything I didn't enjoy. I love the performances. I think Demi Moore and Margaret Qualley did a phenomenal job. Like I said, I've been a really big fan of Demi Moore for a very long time. I've loved a lot of her movies. I couldn't believe when I watched the Golden Globes and I found out that was the first award she'd ever won for acting.
Oh, I heard that. That was crazy.
I was like, how is that even possible? The fact that she was just like, I was always told I was a popcorn actress and nobody ever took me seriously for this crap. Like, watch it. For that reason alone, like, honestly, like, she does a phenomenal job. It is stellar. So it is beautiful to watch her do so much of that character work.
Yeah, Demi Moore goes there.
And she really goes there. She really puts herself out there. She really makes herself uncomfortable. For all of those reasons, I really love the film. Like he said, I love the fact that they had a strong messaging that I agree with, that I feel uncomfortable at from my own perspective, because like I've always been told my whole life that like one of my only good qualities is the fact that I look younger than my age. So I'm like not even sure how I'm supposed to feel about that, because at some point I will probably look a certain age.
It's an interesting way of complimenting someone.
It's an interesting way of complimenting somebody, because like at a certain point I'm gonna look a certain age. So like I'm like, okay, so like that's a thing that I'll never like. So if that's my only redeeming quality, like what happens when that's gone? So like obviously it makes me uncomfortable for like personal reasons. So like that's like my own journey to deal with.
But that's the point of the film.
That's
right?
the point of the film. And so like that all like I said, like that's me like processing that part of it, and I get it, and like I totally can relate then to both characters and like what they're dealing with from both of those dynamics. And then yeah, I think like it's just, and I get it, like I understand the director was purposely trying to make you feel uncomfortable, but it was like the fact that I was made to feel that uncomfortable that's like making me process. Because
sounds like you gotta watch it again.
Nah, maybe
like you gotta watch it again.
Maybe sometime. We did watch Nosferatu twice. Maybe I'll watch The Substance the second time just to see what happens. But yeah, I'm gonna say a 7.2.
Oh, you're just going right below me?
Right below you, yeah. I just don't, Yeah, I think the performances definitely elevate everything, and like I
Mhm.
think, like I said, the sound design, everything else, like fantastic production design, like the artistry and all the work that went into like building the worlds, like her hallway world, her world through billboards, her world through pictures, her like super private world inside her bathroom or their bathroom.
The film is shot beautifully too.
It
It's
is
got this
shot
like
beautifully.
dream-like sleekness
Yeah.
to everything. It's very stylized. It's like not stylized in the way that Baz Luhrmann
Mm-hmm.
is stylized with the way he like moves the camera and stuff, but it's like I'm fucking up the director's name again. Corley Farge. Sorry, again, ignorance. I love the way that you move things in the camera. If you're watching this review, if you made it this far, but it's super stylized, and the way that a Baz Luhrmann film feels like a Baz Luhrmann film,
Mm-hmm.
this one feels like it's all her. You know,
Yeah.
like it feels like it's her voice, even if there are like parts that she's like paying homage to, or like even
Right.
and sometimes sort of taking directly from, but it feels like she really has her own voice to put her own perspective on it,
Mm-hmm.
which is really refreshing. I found it to be.
Mm-hmm.
It kept the film fun to watch the whole time.
It was like one of those things that even though it was making me uncomfortable, I couldn't look away. I mean, I did look away.
Sometimes you did look
I did
away,
look
yeah.
away, like briefly,
eating the
but
shrimp.
like, yeah, the shrimp, like some
The
of the
sewing up the back.
the sewing up the back, the when the
I feel like the sound design did it for you.
it's the
Yeah,
sound
I
design. I think
Sound
it's
design
for
is
me, like
huge.
sound for me is definitely like a huge part
Yeah.
of all of that. And the sound, like I definitely am one of those people that like if you're a messy eater, I like have problems eating next. Like I won't say anything, I won't be rude, and I won't like, and I'll grin and bear it. But like my body, it's like that whole nails on the chalkboard thing. I'm like
Yeah.
my whole body is like basically going like this. So
You're going hunchback. You're going full
Yeah.
Liza Sue.
I'm going full Liza Sue on the inside. So yeah, so the sound design definitely didn't help with some of the visual stuff.
It really elevated things. Sound design is one of my favorite aspects of filmmaking, so
Yeah.
I was really happy with the sound design.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll go 7.6. I'm
Oh,
really
you can
fickle
add
with
more.
I'm really fickle with my scoring system.
So,
You
but
give me $100, I'll make it a 7.8.
if you want, it's his extra 0.2 points. So in conclusion, we highly suggest that you watch The Substance. It will make you uncomfortable,
Hopefully.
probably. It will make you question some things.
It might shock you.
It might shock you.
Might make you think.
Might make you think. You may have to turn it off for a second and turn it back on and go back to it. Possibly.
Yeah.
Preferred that.
You should watch it multiple times.
You should maybe watch it multiple times. I might give it a second go. I might not. I'm not sure yet. I'm still making my mind up. But definitely amazing performances from these actors that were involved. Hugely technical. Loved all of the artistry. Like, we are actors first and foremost, probably, but we are also writers. We're also directors, filmmakers. We've done production design, scripts. So like we have an immense respect for all positions on a set. And yeah, I think it's a film that really highlights the collaboration of a well-oiled machine cog team of filming.
From the articles I read, it was they did things very indie. And it feels like it.
It definitely feels like it.
The director's voice shines in this film.
The director's voice shines. So there was like a head, but there was definitely a huge collaboration amongst a group of artists that put this together. And I think that comes through in everything in the film. So for that, huge respect for everything.
Yeah.
So definitely you should watch it, whether as a filmmaker, you should watch it as an audience member, and for the performances.
Check out The Substance, and we'll be back next week, probably.
Let us know in the comments what you want us to babble about next.
Do we want to talk about Amelia Perez?
No,
Or do we want to watch The Brutalist?
Maybe The Brutalist.
What were the big ones that are going to be
What do you
Oscar-nominated?
think?
What do you want us to watch?
What
Tell
do you
us.
what do you want us to watch? What do you think is going to be nominated by an Oscar?
Tell the dog what you want us to watch.
Tell our puppy. This is
No, but
say
then-
hi. Snowy says hi.
He was kind of napping. I feel a little bad. All right.
All right. Well, thank you for watching. If you're still watching,
This has been Roaming Reviews with Roaming Shadow Productions.
We'll see you next time.